Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome and thank everyone for joining us on the 7th day of this year's Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I've noticed that many ministers are starting out with their messages with their announcing their pronouns. So I want to set my pronouns straight for everyone so that I am not offended. I only have three. If you want to write these down, there's only three of them. It is he, and he. So if you ask me what my pronouns are, I just go he, and I don't get offended by that. So what we're going to examine here are a few articles that I have researched in the past, and covering some of the topics that a few scientists have discovered at that time. They ended up conducting a cross-correlation of adverse neurological manifestations of the disease in relation to those of the injections created and administered under the EUA, Emergency Use Authorization. So these scientists published this scientific literature where they demonstrated the cross-correlation of the adverse effects between the disease and the injections to those found in victims of toxic envenomation by animals. The animals of interest are snakes and scorpions. And when they examined the adverse effects of these diseases and the injections, this enabled them to determine the etiology. And the etiology is the study of causation or the origination of that study. The word is derived from a Greek word which means giving a reason for. I can't pronounce the Greek word, so I'm not even going to attempt. More completely, etiology is the study of the causes, the origins, or reasons behind the way that the things are, or the way that they function, or it can refer to the causes themselves. When the term etiology is used in medicine, it refers to the science that deals with the causes or origin of disease, the factors which produce or make you susceptible toward a certain disease or disorder. If you look at standard traditional molecular biology, the normal progression of a virus as a group is the virus itself wants to survive. It will do anything within its power to survive. And in order for a virus to survive, it must escape detection by the immune system. Irrelevant of the host, whether it's an animal or a human, it wants to escape detection because once recognized by the immune system, antibodies are produced to attack and kill the intruder. The viruses are not technically considered a true living organism. Viruses are considered to be a quasi-living organism. So in order for them to attain the status of living organism, they must first bind to a healthy cell. And again, that's where they gain entry into the cell in order to access the nutrients and the energy of that cell. And that's when they're considered alive. That's when they begin to spread and infect other healthy cells. And this is the entire natural process. And once an immune system attacks the affected cells, because in order to kill a virus, the immune system has to kill the cell that has been infected. At least that's one of the mechanisms to defeat a virus. As the virus is basking in this cytoplasm of the cell and soaking up the sugars and reproducing itself, and then it realizes that it's discovered and that antibodies have been built up against it, it begins to camouflage itself by shape-shifting its characteristics into an attenuated or a lesser form of itself in an attempt to disguise itself from the immune system. So what we're going to do is explore some peptides and the presence and the behavior characteristics of those peptides and their similarities in a virus and in these injections. So let's start with a typical virus. In order for a virus to avoid detection, it shapeshifts, it changes its shape, it mutates to a weaker form of its original self. This is the normal biological process of any traditional virus. It makes this transformation in hopes of escaping detection by the immune system each time it gets discovered, and then it moves to another cell. It goes from cell to cell. However, in our immune system, our immune system is both innate and adaptive. It has T cells, B cells, and memory cells, which are continually searching out these intruders. So the virus will eventually get discovered, at which point another mutation transpires where the virus becomes attenuated to an even weaker form of its original self. So the term mutations is a scientifically inaccurate reference made by the mainstream media, who label these mutations as variants. But in reality, it's a mutation, an attenuated attempt to escape detection. Some of our more current diseases are a designer synthetic entity. Synthetic in that it has been designed to be much more deceptive in its ability to bind to the cell and gain entry into the human system. So in this current disease, we'll call it, there are 16 different HIV fragments, 2 of which are duplicated, so that there's actually a total of 18. Just 2 of them are in there twice. Their purpose is to allow the virus the ability to gain entry into the nucleus to bind to the host DNA, modifying it, and then in the end producing a chimeric DNA. So it's not the complete HIV virus, it's just fragments. So when someone develops the disease from the virus, they're not actually contracting HIV. These components are only there to enhance the ability of gain of entry. So this process violates traditional viral activity. Although this entity mutates to a slightly weaker form of itself, it's still, and even if it made itself into a stronger version of itself, it's still no more lethal than the seasonal flu. So we need to define peptides in order to determine how to produce a protein, since that's our main focal point. So peptides in the Greek language just means digested. They are short chains of amino acids linked by peptide bonds, and chains of fewer than 10 to 15 amino acids are called oligopeptides and include dipeptides, tripeptides, and tetrapeptides. I knew you were waiting to learn that. A polypeptide is a longer, continuous, unbranched peptide chain. So peptides fall under the broad chemical classes of biological polymers and oligomers, alongside nucleic acids and others. The polypeptide that contains more than approximately 50 amino acids is known as a protein. So proteins consist of one or more polypeptides arranged in a biologically functional way, often bound to things such as your coenzymes and cofactors, or another protein or macromolecule such as DNA or RNA. Amino acids have that have been incorporated into peptides are termed residues. A water molecule is released during the formation of each amide bond. All peptides except cyclic peptides have a amino group and a carboxyl group, the residue at the end of the peptide. So when you look at a subset of proteins, which are the building blocks of these proteins, so if these spike proteins produced by the disease and the injections are producing all of the damage that we're now witnessing, so I think we need to look at the components of spike proteins now. So the actions of the manufacturer's messenger RNA derived from the disease is to produce spike proteins, the glycoprotein 120 in particular. However, there's many others, and we've learned from the definition of peptides that proteins are made by the linking of 50 or more amino acids together. Again, a lower level of 20 to 50 amino acids are known as peptides, and then if you have 10 or more amino acids linked together forming a peptide, they're called oligopeptides, and oligo means a few. So we'll continue to expand on the process of reverse engineering some of the symptoms of the disease and some of the side effects of the injections to be able to further identify more of the components and ingredients. So we look at the known side effects, and we know that there are many more side effects that are unknown yet. They have yet to surface and be discovered. Many of the side effects take time to develop. They are latent in their biological actions. Anyway, in the media, we hear them tout that this disease produces spike proteins. And we don't want to just stop there and think that that's interesting. We need to take a further look and think about how to produce a protein. And the information documented by actual scientists provides us with enough data to make an honest and logical conclusion of some of the ingredients in these injections. So now we can examine the raw building blocks of this. You can place your disease name there. And upon examination, we find that we can view it as a single strand of genetic material consisting of amino acids. Also some nucleotides, peptides, with the peptides being the building blocks in forming the proteins. So keep in mind that this single strand of genes is messenger RNA, and the final step of all of the injections currently administered is messenger RNA. So how do they create this injection? And since the injections are a copy of the disease in the same manner that the injection for the seasonal flu is an attenuated copy of the original flu itself. They follow the same normal process in molecular biology, which is the same thing done with the seasonal flu injections. However, they do not label their injections as attenuated. So what interests me the most about their findings is their reverse engineering approach to the side effects of the injection and the symptoms of the disease. So what we're hearing from all the media outlets is focused on spike proteins and their effect on the respiratory system. And what these researchers are discovering are the known origins which cause these types of side effects that produce these neurological disorders. So they're addressing the proven, documented, and published facts from the known world of medicine in order to identify the etiology, the origin of these causal factors to these various disorders. I'm trying to be selective in my verbiage here. Those known origins which identify the ingredients or the components that are causing these reactions, the symptoms, and the side effects. So it was neurological disorders that triggered their research, And when they noticed widespread cases of Alzheimer's, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Parkinson's disease, along with a drastic rise in cardiopulmonary disorders, myocardial infarction, which is heart attacks, strokes, cardiac myopathy, and all-around major organ failures, as well as a shocking number of young children developing heart conditions like congestive heart failure and pulmonary collapse. That is just unheard of in the younger generation, or at least until recent years. And this is what prompted these researchers to begin to examine the etiology of those reactions, symptoms, and side effects that are known to science to identify and address the mechanisms for those causes. Because in their mind, these causes were not syncing up with the narrative. So how can you prove the etiology? Well, one way to logically prove that these peptides that we're talking about are the ones in the injections is to start with the side effects and reverse engineer. That's what these researchers began doing, and it's just the logical progression. Another way is through the normal development of traditional injections, such as the one for influenza, which is derived from the original flu disease itself. They state publicly in their own documentation that they get the sequence of messenger RNA from the original disease. So this means that they're using the same messenger RNA in the injections that they claim to have found in the disease. So, some critical thinking applied here. And if the messenger RNA in the disease is causing a certain reaction or symptoms, then the messenger RNA in the injection goes and produces these same reactions and symptoms from the disease. You're going to generate, when you're generating those same side effects, it's because one is a copy of the other, and therefore they're one and the same. If something is in and acting in the disease, then it will act the same in the injection, which is a copy of the disease. Now let's start with the side effects and reverse engineer then. Moving backwards to the original messenger RNA itself. Doesn't matter what you're reverse engineering. It could be a protein, some sort of equipment, computer software. It's all irrelevant. So if you think about it, reverse engineering is one of the techniques used by hackers to crack computer software. This process of reverse engineering is the same regardless of the subject. You start at one point and logically work your way backwards. In biology, reverse engineering is performed the same way as it would be in the realm of technology. The goal here is trying to identify the ingredients or the compounds so that we understand the construction to help us determine some of the ingredients or how it was put together. It's mentioned in various articles that the combination of these manifestations is odd because they normally occur in a linear fashion, separated from each other, not together in terms of concurrent manifestation at the initial onset. The only time you see these symptoms is from a pre-existing issue. Nothing known to science to date exists where the patient expresses several different reactions or symptoms together at the same initial onset of an illness. That's just unheard of until recent years. And here we are seeing these expressions in the various respiratory manifestations concurrently with a variety of neurological manifestations. So with all these neurological manifestations being disrupted, these scientists looked at acetylcholine, which is an organic chemical which functions in the brain and body as a neurotransmitter. So chemical messages are released by nerve cells sending signals to other cells such as neurons and muscle cells and gland cells. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter used at the neuromuscular junction. Acetylcholine is the chemical messenger neurons of the nervous system released in order to activate muscles. That's how you get your hands and arms to move. So, in an article I read about toxic-like peptides, it mentions that conotoxin is found in the peptides making up the proteins that are in the disease itself. While if conotoxin is found in the disease, it will also be found in the injection because the injection is derived from the messenger RNA of the disease. The natural biological process of RNA is to express a protein, and their own documentation states that they are expressing glycoproteins and spike proteins. And we know that proteins consist of peptides. We went over that because 50 or more peptides are defined as a protein. So when these scientists began working backwards and discovered and proved the peptides are found to contain neurotoxins, this triggered them to begin looking at the neurological side effects. They know what causes these side effects, and they identify those causes in their articles. That actually, the actual substance, the neurotoxins, like the conotoxins, they identify all these. So they have inadvertently identified conotoxin as one of the ingredients in all of the injections because they are all ultimately based on messenger RNA. So in this one article that I'm referencing under the subtitle Phospholipases A2, they also mention, I'm going to refer to that as PLA2. It's phospholipases A2. They also mention muscle degradation by way of a neurotoxic and neurotoxin. And the neurotoxin that they reference here, of course, is PLA2. So what they're saying is if you use dexamethasone, which is a steroid, and it reduces the effects of a neurotoxin identified as PLA2, this phospholipases A2. So if you think about it, cause and effects tells you if dexamethasone is proving to be an effective treatment for these patients, and they state that the dexamethasone is therapeutic specifically to neurotoxins, then logic tells you that there must be a neurotoxin present in the for this dexamethasone to have a positive effect on it. So if there is a severe inflammatory degenerative response due to this presence of the PLA2, and you administer to the patient dexamethasone, you administer that product there, and there's a positive outcome, it means that there was a neurodegenerative toxin present that specifically responds to the steroid dexamethasone, which in this case is this PLA2. So under the next subtitle, metalloproteinase, I think I got that spot on. They describe this metalloproteinase as a toxic-like peptide recognized in animal venom, and that it is zinc dependent. And you can research a multitude of resources, which I've done in the past, which were all discussing the fact that many patients suffering from the disease had extremely low levels of zinc in their blood, every one of them. This is why many physicians are advocating supplementing zinc in your daily diet. Under another subtitle, Results and Discussions, this article states the presence of illegal peptides characterized as toxic components of animal venom was observed in plasma and urine samples from source disease-infected patients and never in plasma, urine, and fecal samples from control individuals. So let's take a critical thinking approach here. The control individuals are the human subjects in the test which were not infected. These people were not suffering from the disease, and they showed no presence or contamination of these illegal peptides from this toxic compound. Those that were infected showed the presence. Those who weren't, none at all. If these illegal peptides were never found in plasma, urine, or fecal samples of those who did not have the disease and only from those suffering from the disease, that means that the peptides came from the disease itself, from the messenger RNA of the disease. And we know that the messenger RNA from the disease is used to produce the messenger RNA of the injections. Therefore, the injections contain the same neurotoxic peptides that the disease contains. So to top it off, these scientists conducted another run of the same test with different patients and a different control group of non-infected individuals, and they produced the same exact results. So we're seldom going to hear the term exactly, quote unquote, because nothing is exact in science. So they will use non-committing terms such as almost identical, different terms like that. You never really hear them commit to the word exactly. So how do they sneak snake venom past the immune system? By using polyethylene glycol. It's PEG is the acronym. When you do your research, you will quickly discover that polyethylene glycol is used in the injections to protect, to encase in an envelope like the messenger RNA, so that it is not broken down by the enzymes in the bloodstream. And when the immune system recognizes raw, naked messenger RNA in the bloodstream, it attacks it as a foreign body. Exogenesis, originating or producing from outside a cell or a tissue or organism. To prevent the enzyme attack, they disguise the mRNA by wrapping it in a polyethylene glycol envelope, a bubble, such as the human. So since the human immune system does not recognize the polyethylene glycol as a foreign substance, nanobodies, including those from scorpions and snake venom, can be delivered encased in a shell of PEG as an ingredient of the injection. I pointed out in the past that the original hypodermic needle is derived from snake fan technology, from which they developed the microneedle array patch. They described this, their inspiration from the hollow fangs of the serpent, specifically the pit viper, in their own documentation, along with pictures demonstrating the intentional similarities. Now we discover they are administering venom through the hollow tube of a hypodermic needle or a serpent fang replica, using the syringe to reproduce the action of the venom gland of the serpent. This is how they get their poison into their prey. The branches of science known informally as omics are various disciplines in biology whose names end in the suffix omics, such as genomics, proteomics. I'm not going to name too many more. Anyway, you'll get the idea. Omics aim at the collective characterization and qualification of pools of biological molecules that translate into the structure, function, and dynamics of an organism or organisms. Some other excerpts from this article. Modern Trends was the subtitle. Most recently, venom research was revolutionized by the introduction of new mass spectrometry, MS methods is what they refer to them, and the development of omics technologies, including, but of course not limited to, genomics. These English language neologisms, said that wrong. Anyway, these specific fields of study in biology that deal with very large-scale data collection and analysis, in particular characterization and qualification of pools of biological molecules. In molecular biology, the suffix OME refers to a totality of some sort and is used to address the objects of omics studies such as genomic and such. So the three main categories within omics technology are genomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. Something like that. Anyway, genomics techniques are used to analyze the structure and function of genomes, while proteomics techniques, they deal with the cellular and tissue-wide protein expression, and metabolomics techniques are concerned with the identification and qualification of all the metabolites in a biological system. So within or in addition to these main techniques, some other omics techniques exist, but you can study those on your own. But several omics techniques have already been applied to venom studies relating to more comprehensive characteristics of venoms and their side effects on organisms. Another modern technology that carries substantial promises for having a high impact on venom studies is nanotechnology. We've covered that many times in the past. Nanotechnology handles materials at the nanometer size level. Nanomaterials represent physical objects possessing sizes between 1 nanometer and 150 nanometers, in at least one dimension anyway. This scale reduction results in significant changes of typical physical and chemical properties of materials, making them very attractive for novel and innovative applications in various fields. And they have garnered particular interest in medicine, pharmacy, and medical diagnostics. Nanoparticles have been used successfully in magnetic and fluorescent bioimaging as carriers for drugs and even as medicines themselves. Geomics represents another versatile omics technology that is used widely in the life of sciences. By definition, genomics is a recombinant DNA sequencing methods and bioinformatics to sequence. And assembly. How do I get rid of that? It's in my way. There we go. So genomics has not been so widely applied to proteomics in venom studies. The genomics of poisonous animals that have been sequenced so far include the honeybee, Chinese scorpion, Brazilian tarantula, Brazilian white-kneed tarantula, the king cobra, and others. A rapid progress in sequencing methods has resulted in cost-effective, high-throughput sequencing, or the next-gen sequencing technologies that allow for the obtainment of millions of sequences at once. That's what their new computer systems. This makes the use of genomics more attractive for scientists involved in venom studies. And according to a research of the up-to-date publicity available literature among the snake species, the genomes of more than 10 are currently being studied. So proteomics, we'll go over that real brief, is mentioned earlier in these articles. Animal venoms are complex mixtures of different substances, mostly proteins and peptides. In some venoms, the content of peptides is quite high, and this is especially true in spider venoms. The proteomic approach is also used to study peptide compounds in venoms. So these peptide type of study was given the name peptidomics. Sorry, trying to read too far into that. Thus far, peptidomics has been used mostly for peptide profiling of invertebrate venoms, and its application has resulted in the discovery of several new toxins. Venoms are a great impact, or they have a great impact on the vital system in the prey organism that should result in substantial changes in the metabolism of the envenomed organism, which in principle may be revealed by the metabolomics. Anyway, so the aim of those metabolomics are the identification and qualification of all the metabolites in a biological system. Those are the cells, the tissue, the organs under any given condition. And in contrast, they focus on the dynamic metabolic response of living systems to some biological stimuli. The task therein is to understand systematic changes through time in complex molecular systems. However, on a few publications in the literature to date, they report on the changes in prey metabolism after envenomation. So nanotechnology, we'll cover that real quick, is a very new branch of technology and developing at an extremely rapid pace. It has found application in many spheres and has not bypassed the venom studies. Nanomaterials are quite promising in medicine, and most studies combining venoms and nanomaterials are dedicated to medical applications. Nanoparticles with venom components have been proposed for use in drugs and diagnostics for many years. For example, nanoparticles conjugated with chlorotoxin, a toxin in scorpion venom, which has been shown to bind specifically to the glioma cells, are considered a potential glioma-targeted drugs. And conjugates of neurotoxins with fluorescent semiconductor nanoparticles or quantum dots. We've covered those in the past. They may be used to detect endogenesis targets expressing in live cells. The data on application of omics and nanotechnology in venom research is systemized consistently in their papers. So potential adverse effects of nanoparticles or nanomaterials, although nanomaterials have numerous applications and possess great advantages over the traditional materials, they can have dangerous properties which have not yet been completely studied and can cause adverse effects in humans. Hang on a second, I need a drink here. Nanoparticles can enter or interact, well, they can enter the human body through several routes, including inhalation, ingestion, skin, penetration, injection, of course. After entering the body, the nanoparticles can interact with different components and localize in various organs, wherein they may maintain their residency and remain intact to be subjected to these modifications or metabolism. These nanoparticles can cross cell boundaries, accumulating within the cell. Once in the cell, they may bind to DNA or proteins and interfere with normal cell functions or trigger an inflammatory response. The production of excess ROS, including free radicals, which can cause oxidative stress, inflammation, and other cellular damage, is one of the main known toxicity mechanisms of nanoparticles. Similar to the toxicity of the nanoparticles' parent bulk materials, the nanoparticles themselves have toxicity that is determined by their chemical composition. However, size, surface chemistry, shape, and other surface smoothness and even the roughness may enhance the toxicity profile of these nanoparticles. All of these features can be altered substantially. While some negative nanoparticles effects have become understandable through detailed research, considerable efforts are still needed to study the psychological effects of acute and chronic exposure to nanoparticles. Concerning the safety of nanoparticle conjugates with venoms or toxins, their application in vivo should be carried out with great care. In vivo's in the lab. Keeping in mind the toxicity of the starting materials. So after examining these articles of the studies and research conducted by these reputable scientists, it's my personal opinion that it is obvious as to exactly who's behind the attack on God's creation. But fear not. Satan is merely a tool of God's. I've mentioned that in the past. He can only do what God allows him to do. God's people were given authority to destroy Satan's power. If we look in Luke chapter 10, verse 17, it says, "And the 70 returned again with joy, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject unto us through thy name. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from the heavens. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing by any means shall hurt you. Notwithstanding in this rejoice not that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. So then I have a few more notes that weren't organized quite well, but I want to cover these rather quickly. In case you're thinking that this technology, because what I've been speaking here were past articles from 4 or 5 years ago, but I wanted to make sure you didn't think that these technologies were just surfacing with these current events. We can look back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. In fact, I want to bring attention to the heart attack gun. Some of you may have heard of this. Back in the 70s, there was a young lady named Mary Embry. She was only 18 at the time, but she was asked by the government to do some special investigation. And this is, you can look this up online. It's still up there online. It's all public. This was a congressional hearing where you'll hear this. This isn't, I'm not making these things up. You can go check this out. I don't have the link here, but it's easy to find. It's a congressional hearing where they show this gun that they had created, and they explain how it was developed and that it's using a shellfish venom that was frozen in ice that you could shoot about 100 meters. The CIA was using about a third of the shellfish toxin available on the market at the time that they had in existence. In this congressional hearing, and you can see it in the video, they're asking certain questions, and this Mary Embry, who was asked the task, I'm going to quote her, says, "Also, I had to find, one time they wanted me to find out if there was such a thing as a poison that was undetectable, especially one that seemed to mimic a heart attack that would kill someone, but it would appear that they had a heart attack, and I did find such a thing," unquote. So in the video, if you go look it up, you'll see that they're asked, does this pistol fire the dart? And they are holding the exact pistol that they created at the time to fire these special darts. And the gentleman replies, yes, quote, "Yes, it does, Mr. Chairman, and a special one was developed which potentially would be able to enter the target without perception. The poison was frozen in some sort of," that was end quote. This quote is again from Mary Embry. She said the poison was frozen in some sort of dart, and then it was shot at very high speed into the person, so that when it reached the person, it would melt inside them, and the only thing that would be like one little tiny red dot on their body, which was hard to detect. There wouldn't be any needle left or anything like that in the person. And then that was an unquote for her. But also the toxin itself wouldn't, this is another quote from within that recording. It says, "But also the toxin itself would not appear in the autopsy." And he replies, yes, that there was no way of perceiving that the target was him. Now these tests were done between the years 1952 and 1975. This congressional hearing was in 1975. This one I just gave you quotes from. So that's over 50 years ago. So you have to think that they didn't just put that on the shelf 50 years ago and forget all about it. They have spent the past 50 some odd years perfecting, learning how to use and isolate venom peptides from animals or components of venom as a weapon. The CIA has been doing that since the 70s. What's even more incredible is that not only are they using this shellfish toxin that they've been using since the 70s to stop the hearts of the humans, it was also undetectable by science once they did the autopsy, because they weren't looking for venom. I'm sure they could have, but they recognized a heart attack, listed as heart attack, off they go. So it's incredible to hear them talk about this in a congressional hearing from back in 1975. Now, when they evaluated all of it, they not only found 15 shellfish neurotoxins. When we fast forward to today, these individuals, all of which tested positive for this disease in every single tissue sample, the urine, the feces, and the blood, but they had also found with these 15 shellfish neurotoxins, like the ones that the CIA was using back in the 70s, they also found 20 different venom peptides that were found from venomous snakes, as well as one more venom from a starfish. So there's 36 different venoms found in these people. Now, what they appear to be setting the stage for their next major disaster is going to be, it looks as though they're running along the lines of the Ebola or the Marburg virus. And this is a warning that we need to be aware of to be able to successfully combat against it. So we need to be aware in the last 10 years they've been studying what are plant-based extracts that prevent the Marburg virus and the Ebola virus from getting inside the cells of the human to infect it. That's one of the telltale signs that they're going to be leaning in that direction. They've been conducting tests for at least the past 10 years to find out how to something to fight against it. So they published the most potent thing that actually does that is a component found in grapefruits and in tomatoes, and it's called Negarinin. Negarinin. It's a component found in tomatoes and tomato paste. It's also found in high levels in grapefruit, and it completely blocks the ability of these toxins to get in. That coupled with, of course, zinc, because zinc again is going to be is what gets depleted when these neurotoxins come in. Now, this Marburg virus that you're probably going to start hearing about soon, or more so anyway. You can hear about it now if you go look for it. It's named after a city in Germany, but it's going to be coming out of China, according to all the research that you can find. The Marburg virus is actually the identical symptoms to every single venom found in the boomslang snake in China. They synthetically have been manufacturing in biological weapons labs and pharmaceutical research labs synthetic versions of boom slang snake venom for decades in multiple factories all over China. And they're inserting them into plasmids, and they're going to do the same thing. These plasmids are going to be the envelope. So they're going to release this again, and the boom slang snake venom is what causes the hemorrhagic effect. External bleeding out of your eyes, your mouth, your skin, your ears, your anus, anything, any orifice, you're going to start bleeding out. And if it's not treated, you'll bleed out completely. So they're going to say that, well, you're going to fall over dead. You're going to be seeing this type of thing. It's going to be very horrendous, but they're going to need something very horrendous to bring in their next level. Anyway, that's the impact of this boom slang snake venom. You can go on the internet, look up the Marburg virus, print out all of its symptoms, and then you print out all of the symptoms from the boom slang snake venom, and you lay them side by side, and you will see they're identical. Now, researchers have also found out, as I was saying, in the past 10 years, they've been looking for the antidote. NAC, N-acetylcholine, knocks it out. EDTA knocks it out. High dose vitamin C, I did not put those notes in here, but during the last major episode, China, the country who manufactures the most vitamin C in the world, started giving their patients extremely high levels of vitamin C, and within a few days they went home fine. So they started administering to their entire population high doses of vitamin C during that episode. Of course, zinc is also an inhibitor. Glutathione, your liver makes that, but you can supplement. And nicotine. Every cell in your body has nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and if all your cells, even those included in your immune system, have nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that they use to benefit your cells, and God put all this nicotine in plants. Nicotine is not a chemical, nicotine is a nutrient. Aside from the tobacco plant, the next highest plant that has nicotine is eggplant. You'll find nicotine in all of your nightshades, tomatoes, your squashes, your celery. So if God put nicotine in all of these vegetables and plants, and nicotinic acetylcholine receptors on all the cells to help defend the body, I think there's a reason. Another thing I wanted to cover was, because someone brought this up earlier, the medical industry uses, in their medical terminology, it's all in Latin. That's their favorite language. And all of their diagnosis are in some form of Latin. And I thought it was very interesting, if you look up the definition of the Latin word virus, it's venom. So you start seeing how a lot of these things get tied in together. The Wall Street Journal even published that the Latin word for virus is venom. They published that in February of 2020 in their magazine. The reason why the word virus is so important to be put in the naming of these issues that they're presenting is because the word virus historically means venom. And all venoms target nicotine receptors. All nicotine receptors control the entire function of the human frame. When these spike proteins see ivermectin in the system, they will let go of the cell and jump over to the ivermectin, and the ivermectin will start dissipating these spike proteins. If you have these spike proteins and you take ivermectin, and the spike proteins jump over to the ivermectin, and then you ingest some nicotine, these spike proteins will not only let go of the cell and jump to the nicotine, they will let go of the ivermectin and jump to the nicotine. They prefer the nicotine over the ivermectin, and the nicotine will dissipate them from your body faster. So anyway, I wanted to leave a little bit of hope there. Remember the words from Luke chapter 10, verses 17 through 20. God He gave us the authority to trample on these snakes and scorpions, and nothing will hurt us. And with that, I want to say, do not accept the mark of the beast. Let's make all our days worthy of God's blessings. And I'd like to bring up Sarah, and she can finish out.